The yard was supposed to be calm that morning, but it wasn't. In the center of the field, 3 men stood in a tight circle. One wore the tattoo of the Aryan Brotherhood, one had the blue beads of the Sureños, and the last the star-shaped ink of the Gangster Disciples. These were men who were never meant to stand side by side, unless something terrible was about to happen. A loud shout echoed across the yard. Then suddenly, the Sureño member pulled out a sharpened metal spike. The Aryan Brotherhood soldier grabbed him from behind, and the Gangster Disciple stepped forward like he was ready to finish the job. 3 of the most brutal prison gangs in the United States working together. The guards froze. Even the other inmates stopped moving. And just when it looked like the 3 were about to strike, a 4th man walked out from behind the weight rack. Tall, calm, covered in scars. The kind of man everyone knew, but nobody wanted to cross. The entire yard turned silent. Who was he? Why were these deadly enemies suddenly acting like they were on the same team? And what were they planning to do next? Whatever it was big. And it was dangerous. But to understand why this moment mattered, we need to go back. Back to where the danger first started. 6 months earlier, the prison was tense, but nothing like what it would become. The warden had warned that the gangs, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Sureños, the Bloods, the Crips, and the Gangster Disciples, were getting restless. But most days were simple. The inmates ate. They played cards. They talked trash. And they waited for time to pass. Then one night, everything changed. A new inmate arrived. His name was Marcus Redline Cooper, a quiet guy with a serious look in his eyes. He wasn't part of any gang, at least that's what he said. But everyone knew something was different about him. He walked into the cell block with no fear. And every gang watched him like he had brought a secret they all wanted. Redline stayed silent. He kept to himself. But trouble followed him like a shadow. At first, it was small stuff, whispers in the showers, eyes tracking him in the cafeteria. But then came the night that shook the entire prison. Around midnight, the lights flickered. A loud alarm buzzed once, then died. Darkness. Then the sound of rushing footsteps. Redline sat up on his bunk just as 3 masked inmates kicked open his cell door. One held a shank. Another carried a padlock in a sock. The 3rd just smiled. Redline whispered, "So it begins." They charged at him. And that is where this chapter ends. The attack is seconds away. But who sent these men? And why were they after him? The 3 masked inmates rushed into Redline's cell like wolves. The first man swung the padlock in a sock straight at Redline's head. Redline ducked. The second swung the shank toward his ribs. Redline blocked it with his forearm. Blood began dripping instantly. The 3rd man grabbed Redline from behind, trying to choke him. For a moment, it looked like Redline was done. But Redline fought like a man who had survived worse. He twisted, slammed the second attacker into the wall, and kicked the first one straight in the knee. The padlock fell to the floor. But there were 3 of them, and only one Redline. The man behind him tightened the chokehold. Redline's vision blurred. He dropped to one knee. Just as he was about to pass out, a loud whistle echoed through the tier. Someone was watching. Someone powerful. The 3 masked men froze. The man choking Redline suddenly let go. They all turned toward the upper walkway. A shadow stood near the railing, broad shoulders, tattooed neck, hands tucked calmly behind his back. Redline wiped the blood from his mouth. He knew exactly who it was. It was Wolf, a shot caller for the Aryan Brotherhood, one of the most feared inmates in the whole prison. Wolf gave a slow shake of his head, almost like he was saying, "Not yet." The 3 masked men backed away and ran out of the cell. The ambush was over. But the real danger had just begun. The next morning, Redline walked into the cafeteria with a bandage around his arm. Every gang watched him. The Bloods sat on the left, pretending not to stare. The Sureños spoke quietly in Spanish. The Gangster Disciples tapped on the table like they were sending a message. Redline sat alone. A young inmate named Kyle, a kid who wasn't in any gang, walked over and sat down nervously. "Why'd they go after you?" he asked. Redline didn't answer. Kyle whispered. People say you used to be part of something bigger, something even the gangs are scared of. Redline looked at him for a moment. You shouldn't sit with me, he said quietly. Kyle stood up slowly and walked away. But the rumor had already spread. Redline wasn't just some regular inmate. He was a problem. And the gangs didn't like problems. Later that afternoon, Redline was on yard cleanup duty near the fence line. The wind was quiet. Too quiet. He heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, he saw two members of the Sureños walking toward him, blue bandanas tucked in their pockets. One of them spoke. Redline, whatever you did before you came here, it's catching up to you. Redline replied softly, I didn't do anything. The Sureño shook his head. Someone thinks you did. Someone big. Before Redline could ask who, a loud alarm blared across the yard. Every inmate froze. Every guard rushed toward Tower 4. A guard screamed, we have a man down. Someone had been stabbed near the basketball court. And when the crowd parted, Redline saw something that made his heart stop. The victim had a message carved into his shirt. A message cut with a blade. We want Redline. The gangs hadn't just attacked him. They had sent a warning to the whole prison. And this was only the beginning. The prison yard exploded into shouting as guards dragged the stabbed inmate away. Redline stood frozen. That message, we want Redline, wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration, meaning one thing. A brutal prison gang had officially marked him for death. But which gang? The Bloods? The Aryan Brotherhood? The Sureños? The Gangster Disciples? Or worse, all of them. A guard pushed Redline back. Move. Back to the fence. Redline stepped away, but his eyes stayed locked on the bloody shirt being carried past him. His past had followed him here. And now, someone was making sure the whole prison knew. A few hours later, Redline was escorted to the warden's office. Warden Carter slammed a file on the desk. You know why you're here, she said. Redline stayed quiet. The warden leaned forward. 2 attacks in 2 days. That's not random. Someone wants you dead. And I need to know why. Redline finally spoke. I didn't start this. The warden tapped the file again. But you're in the center of it. She opened it, showing photos from another prison. Stabbings, yard riots, burned cells. Every time your name shows up, a gang war follows. Redline looked down. I never asked for any of that. The warden sighed. You're either incredibly unlucky or incredibly dangerous. Before she could question him more, a radio crackled. Code red. Cell Block C gang fight. Multiple inmates down. The warden stood instantly. Get him out of here. Now. 2 guards grabbed Redline and rushed him out the door. But the danger was already waiting for him. The guards escorted Redline down the metal walkway toward the C block stairs. The lights flickered. Shouting echoed below. Then, a metal door slammed shut behind them. The guards turned. Locked. A voice shouted from below. Send him down. Redline looked over the railing, and what he saw made his stomach twist. At least 15 inmates stood in the center of C block. Bloods, Sureños, Aryan Brotherhood, Gangster Disciples. All in the same circle. All waiting. All staring up at him. One of them yelled, Redline. Time to pay up. The guards panicked. We need backup. But backup was too far. The gangs began climbing the stairs. Slow, confident, like predators closing in. Redline whispered, Not again. The first inmate reached the top step and swung a homemade blade straight at Redline's throat. The blade flashed in the dim hallway light. Redline jerked his head back just in time. The shank sliced the air, so close he felt the wind from it. The inmate growled, Hold still. Redline grabbed the man's wrist and slammed it against the metal railing. The shank dropped. It bounced down the stairs, clinking on every step. But more footsteps were coming. Heavy ones. Fast ones. Redline backed up, breathing hard. The guards behind him shouted into their radios, but nobody was answering. It was just Redline, 2 terrified guards, and a climbing army of gang members. The inmate he had disarmed lunged forward and tackled Redline to the ground. They rolled across the walkway. Redline shoved him off, but another man grabbed his ankle. Then another grabbed his shirt. Then another. Redline was about to be dragged toward the stairs, when suddenly a loud blast shook the whole block. A tear gas canister smashed through the upper window and exploded in a cloud of white smoke. Guards were finally responding. The inmates coughed and backed away, their eyes burning. Redline struggled to his feet, gas swirling around him. One guard grabbed him. "We're moving. Now." They dragged him toward the far exit as the gangs shouted through the smoke. This attack wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That night, Redline sat alone in a small concrete cell in protective custody. No window, one light, no noise except the buzz of electricity. The prison doctor wrapped Redline's bruised arm. "You're lucky," he said. "Another second, and that blade would have opened your throat." Redline stared at the floor. "It's not luck," he whispered. "They're not going to stop." The doctor frowned. "Then tell someone why they want you." Redline didn't answer. He couldn't. He knew the truth would only make things worse. Hours passed. He barely slept. Every sound felt like a threat. Then, sometime past midnight, a soft tapping came from the vent near the ceiling. Tap, 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 tap. Redline's eyes widened. That wasn't random. That was a prison code. A message. He stood up and listened closely. Tap, 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 tap. Redline recognized it instantly. It was the code for "They found you." Redline rushed to the door and looked through the small glass window into the hallway. Empty. Silent. He backed away slowly. He didn't know who was coming or how they found his isolated cell, but he knew they were close. Then, the lights in the entire block shut off. Total darkness. Redline could hear someone breathing on the other side of the door. A metal tool scraped into the lock. Someone whispered, "Open it." The lock started clicking. One twist, two twists, three, and then the door slowly began to swing open. The door creaked open inch by inch. Redline stepped back into the shadows of the small cell, muscles tight, breath slow. A hand slipped through the crack first, gloved, steady, and holding a long piece of sharpened metal. Then a voice whispered, "Don't run. It'll be quick." Redline didn't move. He waited for the attacker to step 1 foot inside, and then he shoved the metal bed frame with all his strength. Bang! The door slammed into the intruder's face. He stumbled back, clutching his nose. Redline jumped forward, grabbing the man's wrist. They struggled in the pitch-black hallway, the sound of fists and metal echoing off the walls. Another voice hissed from the darkness, "Finish him already." A second attacker ran toward Redline, but bright flashlights suddenly blasted down the hallway. "Stop. Get on the ground." Guards stormed in, shouting, swinging batons. The attackers fled into the darkness, disappearing before the guards could grab them. One officer pulled Redline up. "You're not safe anywhere, are you?" Redline didn't answer. He already knew. This wasn't random. Someone high up, someone powerful, was ordering these hits. The next morning, before Redline could even eat breakfast, 2 men in suits walked into the protective custody block. Agents. Real ones. FBI. They sat across from Redline in a small interview room. Agent Morris placed a folder on the table. "We've been tracking gang communication," he said. "Your name keeps coming up." Redline stared at the wall. Agent Morris leaned in. "Do you know why?" Redline whispered, "Yes." The agent paused. "Then tell us." Redline shook his head. "Not yet." The second agent frowned. "If you don't talk, we can't protect you." Redline looked up at them with tired eyes. "You can't protect me," he said softly. "Not from them." The agents exchanged nervous glances. If Redline was scared, it meant the threat was bigger than they expected. Later that day, Redline was escorted to do laundry duty. It was supposed to be safe, only 2 inmates allowed at a time. But when Redline entered the room, the other inmate present wasn't folding clothes. He was waiting. A tall man with tattoos covering his arms. a member of the Gangster Disciples. He didn't attack. He just stared at Redline. You should have talked, the man said quietly. People died because you didn't. Redline stepped back. What do you want? The man looked around the empty room, then leaned in close. I'm not here to kill you, he whispered. I'm here to warn you. Someone paid all the gangs to go after you. Redline felt his chest tighten. Who? The man shook his head. I don't know his real name, only what they call him. What's that? Redline asked. The man swallowed hard. The broker. Before Redline could ask anything else, a loud crash came from behind him. The door had just slammed shut. Redline turned and saw 4 inmates in masks standing in the doorway. One held a fire extinguisher. One held a chain. One held a knife. The last one pointed at Redline and said, End him. They rushed forward, and the laundromat exploded into violence. The 4 masked inmates charged forward. One swung the chain. Redline dodged it and grabbed a laundry cart, rolling it hard into the first attacker's knees. He fell instantly. The man with the knife lunged. Redline grabbed a plastic bin and blocked the blade. The bin cracked, but Redline pushed forward, slamming the man against the washer. The fire extinguisher attacker blasted white powder everywhere. The room turned cloudy. Nobody could see. Redline coughed, backing up, but then a hand grabbed his shirt. The gangster disciple who warned him pulled him behind one of the machines. They'll kill you if you stay, he whispered. Redline shook his head. No, someone has to end this. The masked man rushed again. Redline stepped out of the fog and kicked him in the stomach. He went down hard. The last attacker swung the chain wildly. Redline grabbed the chain mid-air, pulled it, and slammed the man into the floor. The room went silent. The attackers groaned on the ground, defeated. Redline stood in the middle of the chaos, chest heaving, sweat dripping, powder covering his clothes. He had survived again, but he knew this wasn't over. Not until he faced the broker. 3 days later, Redline sat across from the FBI again. Agent Morris placed a picture on the table. This is the broker, he said. Redline's eyes widened. He knew that face. A man in a suit, clean-shaven, calm smile. The same man who once pretended to help him, before betraying him. He's not a gang leader, Agent Morris said. He's worse. He's the one who funds them. He sells information. He plays gangs against each other. And you got too close to exposing him. Redline leaned back. That was why every gang wanted him dead. He wasn't their enemy. He was the broker's enemy. Agent Morris continued. We're transferring you out of state. There's a witness protection deal on the table. If you testify, we can shut the broker down. Redline thought for a long time. Then, he finally nodded. I'll do it. The prison gates opened the next morning. Redline stepped into a white transport van escorted by armed officers. It was time to leave the nightmare behind. As the van drove off, the prison looked small behind him. Just a block of concrete holding too many secrets. Agent Morris sat beside him. You made the right choice, he said. Redline watched the road. Let's finish this. But just when the van turned onto the main highway, a black SUV swerved in front of them. Another slammed into the van from behind. The van skidded sideways. Tires screeched. Metal twisted. Redline grabbed the seat. Agent Morris shouted, Hold on. The van flipped onto its side. Glass shattered. The world spun. Inside the smoke, Redline heard a chilling voice outside. Get him out. The broker wants it done today. Redline's eyes widened. This was it. The broker's final move. Redline crawled across the van, coughing, reaching for the broken door. And just as a masked man grabbed him, FBI backup trucks roared onto the road. Agents jumped out, shouting commands. The attackers ran into the woods as bullets cracked the air. 2 agents rushed to the van and pulled Redline to safety. You're alive, one said. That's all that matters. Redline looked back at the crashing smoke behind him. It was over. The broker failed. And for the first time in a long time, Redline felt safe. Weeks later, the broker was arrested. Every gang attack stopped. And Redline was moved far away, starting a new life. But the story of the gangs he survived, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Sureños, the Bloods, the Crips, the Gangster Disciples, would remain part of one of the most brutal chapters in U.S. prison history. Redline didn't look back. Some stories end not with victory, but with survival. And he had survived all of them. If you found this story gripping and want more deep dives into real crime, prison life, and the hidden world behind bars, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Drop a comment. And tell me which prison story you want next. This is your narrator signing off. Stay safe and stay curious.